What would we do without hand or power tools? Quite simply, they're a necessity. They can be used for something as simple as tightening a bolt on your bicycle or for more complex jobs like working on a car engine. Whatever the job, big or small, the truth remains that tools make our lives and the job at hand easier. The key thing to remember is that although tools are extremely useful, they can also be dangerous if not used correctly. Organizations such as Underwriters Laboratory, Consumer Product Safety Commission, OSHA, and ANSI have had major strides in evaluating and testing tools in an effort to make using tools safer. Although all this time and effort has gone into making safety warnings and easy-to-read safety instructions, there are still those who carelessly disregard them, and unfortunately more times than not, they are the recipients of a horrific injury. Notice the following warning that was taken from an actual safety instruction booklet from a major chainsaw manufacturer. Do not place running blade against the groin region. Yes, at some point someone had to have actually done this and gotten injured in the process for this warning to be added to the safety instructions. Let's face it, people come up with new, unsafe, creative ways to use their tools every single day. For your safety and the safety of those around you, we urge you to read all safety material that accompanies your tools so that you may prevent any injuries from occurring. At times, common sense leaves some of us, and as a result, injury can occur. Serious injuries that occur with hand or power tools can leave permanent damage and in many cases affect one's livelihood. Your employer is responsible for the condition of all equipment and power tools you use on the job, but you're responsible for the proper use, maintenance, and safe operation. Always remember, with no exception, that all hand and power tools require the use of proper personal protective equipment. Be sure to wear the proper eye, face, and hearing protection whenever using hand or power tools. The manufacturer's instruction manual will generally dictate the specifics, so study it carefully. The responsibility of preventing or avoiding hazards rests squarely in your hands. Injury statistics indicate that approximately 85 to 95% of all accidents and injuries are the direct result of an unsafe act on the part of the worker using the tool. Therefore, as professionals, we must learn to recognize the hazards associated with the types of tools we use and follow the safety precautions necessary to prevent injuries. The good news is that if you develop a good safety attitude and safety awareness and follow time-tested tool safety suggestions, your chances of a serious injury will be greatly diminished. Let's take a moment to talk about some basic rules for hand tool safety. Every tool was designed to do a specific job and task. Only use a tool for its intended purpose, and avoid the temptation of adapting the tool to make it work. Doing so places you at risk of injury. Using a tool for anything other than its intended purpose is a primary cause of injury. Even with proper use, wear and tear is inevitable, so monitor your tools to make sure they are in good condition. To prolong the life of your tools, make sure that they're sharp, clean, oiled, dressed, and of course, prevent unnecessary abuse. Worn tools are just plain dangerous. For example, worn teeth on a pipe wrench can easily slip. Adjustable wrenches will slip if its jaws are sprung, and hammerheads fly off loose handles. Tools subject to impact, such as chisels, punches, and steel stakes, tend to mushroom from the frequent impact. Keep them properly dressed or sharpened to avoid flying shrapnel that can increase the possibility of injury to your eyes or other body parts. Many of us are guilty of trying to force a tool by using cheater bars to increase their capacity. It's dangerous and increases the possibility of injury. Don't do it. Never hold small work in your hand when using a sharp tool. When you do so, you risk injuring yourself and others around you. Screwdriver points and blades should not be worn, and handles must be in good condition. Never use hammers that have broken claws, and be sure to check to see if the handle is tight and not loose. Soft metal hammers should have the heads dressed properly. Always use proper size and weight for the job at hand. Cutting tools should be kept sharp to ensure good, smooth, clean cutting. When using a file, be aware of its tang, which is sharp and can cause a puncture injury. Always use the proper handles of any tool you use. When using knives, shears, or other cutting tools, always cut in a direction away from your body. When working from elevated areas or locations, it's important to pay extra attention to your surroundings and use extra caution to prevent tools from falling from scaffolds, ladders, or any elevated environment. Always tie off the container holding your work tools. Although tempting, never carry tools in your hand or pocket when climbing. Under no circumstances should you ever toss tools up to a coworker that are elevated, or have them toss you down tools from an elevation. Always use the bucket method to ensure the safety of all in the vicinity. Let's take a moment to look at some of the most common power tools found in shops just about everywhere. Remember, the number one rule for preventing injury is to read and follow the manufacturer's manual that came with your tool or equipment. One major consideration to remember is to avoid using power tools in wet environments. The failure to do so could be shocking. Workers have been killed when the power tool they are using came into contact with water and caused an electrocution. If you must work in a damp environment, be sure that the tools are protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter. Double check to see if your drill is double insulated. This helps provide additional protection against electric shock. Never assume that a hand tool is acceptable for work on energized equipment because it has a plastic coating on its handles. Although insulated hand tools must meet specific industry standards, they provide only a partial barrier from electrical hazards. The safest way to work on electrical equipment is to make sure that it's de-energized before you begin. When it comes to power tools, most experts agree that the circular saw is likely to be the most commonly abused and most dangerous power tool. Unfortunately, it is a common mistake to use saws in poor condition, with guards removed, in a misguided effort to speed up the job, with ground prongs removed, used in wet conditions, sawing overhead. The list goes on and on. Some of the absolute safety requirements when using any circular saw are wearing eye protection. Industrial safety goggles, face shield, or safety glasses with side shields are always required. Not wearing this proper safety equipment is just a gamble with your vision. Dust masks are required to protect from inhalation of not just nuisance dust, but also against the inhalation of some of the toxic products used in today's manufactured wood products. We all know that power saws not only generate high noise levels, but also produce a very high pitch as well. Hearing protection is required to prevent overexposure to these noise levels. Prior to use, check blades for proper alignment, damage, or defects. Be sure the blade is of the proper size and RPM rating by referring to the manufacturer's nameplate. Sharp blades are safe blades, as they're less likely to bind or kick back. If the blade binds or the saw stalls, avoid the tendency to push harder and release the switch immediately. The most common misuse of a circular saw is a guard that has been rendered inoperable by tying it back or complete removal. Check to ensure that guards return to their normal position quickly when released. If a guard seems slow to return or hangs up, then it needs repair or adjustment, and do so immediately. Support large panels when cutting so they don't pinch or bind the blade, and never remove the saw from a cut while the blade is rotating. Avoid holding a piece of work with your hand or against your leg while sawing. Always adjust the blade to no more than 1/8 to 1/4 inch greater than the thickness of the material to be cut. Portable circular saws are not designed for cutting logs, roots, trimming trees, or shrubs. This is a very hazardous practice, but very common. Avoid this improper use, and you could save yourself from a trip to the emergency room. Portable jig or saber saws are a very handy power saw to have in your collection of tools. As with all power tools, eye protection during use is a must. Under certain dusty conditions, using eye protection in conjunction with a full face shield would be appropriate. Of course, due to noise generated by power tools, hearing protection would also be required, especially when used for long periods of time. Many have a hazardous tendency to replace blades with the saw still plugged in. This is a mistake that could result in a very serious injury or finger amputation. Again, your livelihood could be at risk. Saws must always be unplugged before checking and installing blades or other accessories. When in operation, be sure that the power cord is secured in an area it will not be subject to coming into contact with the blade. When operating a saber saw, be sure that the tool's base plate or shoe rests firmly on the work before turning on the tool. This will help prevent the tool from jumping out of your hand. And of course, be sure to keep your hands and fingers clear of moving parts. Be sure that you're well aware of what is behind a cut before you make it. Check for any electrical wiring, water pipes, or other objects that may be in the cutting path. Any electrical wiring must be relocated and/or made safe by a qualified person. When plunge cutting, use a blade designed for that purpose and follow the manufacturer's recommended procedures. Maintain firm contact between the base and the material being cut throughout cutting procedures. Due to the high speed and sharpness, routers are one of the most dangerous tools that you may use. Prior to use, be sure to carefully read the owner-operator's manual thoroughly. As an operator of a router, it's important to have a good understanding of the speeds in which they work. Routers typically operate in the range from 20,000 to 30,000 RPM or more. As a comparison, this is approximately 25 times faster than an electric drill. Of course, always follow the rules of personal protective equipment, which was covered in a previous section. Since rotating parts can pull you into a sharp bit, never wear gloves, loose clothing, jewelry, or any dangling objects. If you have long hair, it's highly recommended that it be put up to prevent getting caught in the rotating tool. Also, be sure to keep your hands away from bits or cutter areas. Install router bits securely according to the directions in the owner's manual, using only the wrenches provided with the tool. Maintain a firm grasp on the router's gripping surface with both hands at all times. Failure to do so could result in loss of control, leading to a very serious injury. Refer to the operator's manual regarding laminate trimmers or other small routers that are typically used with one hand. Have you noticed that we've mentioned the operator's manual several times? We've done so to stress the importance of reading it whenever first using a tool or when you have any question regarding the usage of the tool. Always point the cutter blade opening away from your body. When starting a router equipped with carbide-tipped bits, the router should be started beneath a workbench or other firm surface to protect you should the cutter blade fly off when started. Never remove chip shields or guards, as they're there for your safety. When removing a router from the work surface, always be careful to point or turn the base and bit away from you or anyone in the vicinity. Never reach underneath the work while bits are rotating, and avoid the temptation to remove debris while the router's operating. Always disconnect the plug from the electrical outlet before changing bits or making any adjustments. If you need to change a bit immediately after use, be aware that the blade and collet may be extremely hot and may cause a bad burn. Your desired cutting depth adjustment should be made only according to the tool manufacturer's recommended procedures, which, once again, can be found in your operator's manual. Be sure to tighten adjustment locks and be certain that the cutter shaft is engaged in the collet at least 1/2 inch. Be sure to secure the work firmly in place before operating the router. Check that the switch is in the off position before plugging into the power outlet. For greater control, always allow the motor to reach full speed before feeding the router into the work. Due to the high speeds, never force a router. As soon as you're done with the task, immediately unplug and properly store your router. Power drills come in numerous sizes and power. Drills are the most common tool found in any shop since they're extremely handy and can be used for many different things. Since power drills are used so often, it's likely that they may not be in the best working condition. Carefully check that your drill is in safe operating condition, and especially the condition of the power cord. Power cords are often loose, frayed, or missing the ground prong. Report any damage to your supervisor for immediate repair. Anytime you can't clearly see behind the work at hand, check carefully for possible electrical wiring or pipes. Be sure that any wires have been disconnected at their power source by a qualified person. Always hold the tool by the insulated grasping surfaces if one is provided. Be sure the trigger switch actuates properly. It should turn the tool on and return to the off position after release. Be sure the chuck is tightly secured to the spindle and the drill bit is secure as well. If the drill uses a key chuck, be sure to remove it before use to prevent it from flying off the chuck and causing injury. Don't forget the personal protective equipment recommended by the tool manufacturer. If your drill uses handles, be sure they're securely installed. It's a good work practice to use these handles as they provide more control. Since these tools have a spinning or rotating action, you must avoid wearing anything such as clothing, gloves, jewelry, or long hair that could get caught in the spinning shaft. Be sure of your footing when using a drill and never force it. If you take a look in your drill index, it's likely that the majority of bits are worn or dull. The most common cause of an injury from a drill is dull bits that wander from the hole that was previously started. Always drill with even pressure to cut smoothly. If the drill slows, relieve the pressure. If the drill binds in the work, release the trigger. Unplug the drill and then remove the bit from the work. Never try to free a jammed bit by starting and stopping the drill. Avoid placing the switch in the lock-on position if the job or material might bind. As you get close to breaking through, be sure to hold the drill firmly and reduce pressure to allow the bit to smoothly finish the hole. When the job gets tough, it's time to break out the impact tools. One of the most important rules to remember is, only use sockets specifically designed for use with impact tools. Substituting standard chrome-plated sockets can result in damage or injury, as non-impact rated sockets are much thinner and not designed for the high impact generated by the tool. Impact sockets are denoted by their black finish and heavier construction. Sometimes the impact spindle or retaining pin becomes worn, causing wobble. An untrained individual may attempt to secure the socket to the spindle with wire or another object. This is a dangerous practice. The tool must be taken out of service and professionally repaired. One must be careful when torquing small bolts, as they can easily be over-torqued, causing damage to the item being worked on. Try using the tool lightly and then finalizing the torque with a hand torque wrench. These high-speed marvels perform a lot of different tasks quickly. Because of the high speeds, you must be sure to read the tool's safety manual and other instructions for all applications and use of this tool. Lose your attention span for even a moment, and you can lose a large chunk of flesh in an instant. There are a lot of accessories for rotary die grinders. Be sure to only use equipment approved and rated for the speed of your tool. Using an improperly rated accessory can cause it to shatter. This is another reason to wear all the appropriate personal protective equipment as recommended by the manufacturer. Don't wear loose clothing, jewelry, or any dangling objects that may get caught in rotating parts or accessories, and of course, tie back any long hair. Be sure the switch is in the off position before plugging in. Hold the wheel or cutter away from you and coworkers when starting a grinder. Abrasive wheels need to breathe, so we don't want to clog them with soft metals. Be sure that you know the composition of the material you're working with. If using grinding wheels on soft materials, the wheel will overload and cause the wheel to shatter or disintegrate. Never use cracked or damaged grinding wheels. Carefully inspect and check the wheel before each use. Always check the cutter or wheel for tightness prior to use, as a loose cutter or wheel can be thrown from a rotary grinder, causing serious injury. If the tool is dropped, be sure to inspect it for damage. Avoid using excessive pressure during use, since this can bend or break the collet, mandrel, wheel, or cutter. Never over-tighten the collet. It can damage the cutter wheel. If the tool does not run smoothly, the cutter may be bent or out of balance. Never use this tool while holding the work in your hand. Always secure the work to a vise or clamp to prevent injury. Be sure to keep your hands and fingers well away from the working area, since these tools operate at high speeds and get hot very quickly. Allow time for the tool to cool before handling, and never place it in your back pocket for obvious reasons. Be sure that all combustible materials are removed from the area to prevent a fire. Well, we've barely scratched the surface on hand and power tool safety. Due to its brief nature, we must reiterate the importance of carefully reading and following the safety instructions provided for each tool by the manufacturer. If you have any questions, be sure to bring it to the attention of your supervisor. Your safety is much more important to do anything less.